Rich, we can't hear you, mate. I'm sure it was a beautiful introduction.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. There we go.
Oh, well, I'm fairly sure you can also see me blushing. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Welcome to our third Answer Digital Leeds Digital Festival event. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about Agile initiation through discovery. I do appreciate you joining us all. It goes without saying that we hope that your friends, your family, and indeed yourselves are safe and well during what is undoubtedly a very, very challenging time for us all. Patrick, if we could move on. So, for those of you that are not familiar with Answer, my name's Richard Ellis. I'm one of Answer's directors, and I've got great pleasure of introducing the company to you today. We are a 20-year-old employee-owned digital agency based just outside Leeds. Our 80-strong team of people work in the retail, wealth and finance sectors, helping organisations of vastly varying size or scale with digital change programmes. We are fiercely proud of our people, not just in the work that they do for our customers, but in how they work with our customers. And that really does form a really effective context for why we're here this afternoon. So it does give me great pleasure not only to introduce the company, but to introduce our panel. So, Louisa, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Louisa van der End. So I'm an Agile PM and a certified Scrum Master. I've been with Answer about 1.5 years now, and I'm currently working in the fintech sector, and I'm working on a pension portal.
Fabulous. Can I just confirm, Louisa, are you Italian?
No.
You're definitely, okay, fantastic. Ed, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, so I'm a senior business consultant with Answer Digital. Joined in March last year and been loving every minute of it. I work mainly in the finance sector on wealth management platforms and their digital offerings. And Rich, I'm not Italian.
Which brings us to, certainly by no means the least, Marvi.
Hello everyone, I'm Italian. Marvi Cotone, one of the Agile project manager in Answer Digital, certified Scrum Master, and currently working on different projects in all the different sectors we're working on.
Super, thanks, Marvi. And what are your thoughts on Ed's carbonara recipe?
I think we are making a deal here because we know how to bake a great focaccia. So, but with the carbonara, we still have to work on actually.
He's got some
put mushroom in carbonara.
Well, listen, thank you everybody. Thank you all of you for helping us out with this and contributing. So Patrick, if you could please. So just to give you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously we've mentioned it's going to be about discovery, but what's the why of discovery and who does it? Next, we're going to be moving on to the importance of not just understanding what it is that you're trying to output at the close of a discovery phase, but what's the outcome that you're looking to achieve. Next, we're going to be talking about the need for balancing agility whilst running to a plan. We're going to be talking quite a lot about orchestration, something that Louisa is very fond of. Next, we are going to be touching on team dynamics. We are all very, very passionate agilistas. I think that's a credible phrase. And for us, building high-performing teams, it is absolutely about people and building an environment in which team dynamics can really offer people the opportunity to do the best work. The last one, so this is really quite key for us. Discovery phase has, and we will get onto it in much greater detail later, but I've had conversations in the past where people have said, well, is this not akin to a waterfall requirements design phase? I think one of the keys to discovery is understanding when to stop yourselves from disappearing down a rabbit hole. So these are the things we're going to be covering. Patrick, if you would. Okay, so, oh, brilliant, fantastic. Right, so we distributed a link before this session to slido.com. It's a Q&A service that we've used throughout other LDF festival events, works really well. We really do want the session to be interactive. So if you do have a question or a burning desire to quiz our panel, then if you scan either the QR code or take yourself to slido.com and use meeting code 9125, that'll navigate you straight into this session and you'll be able to ask questions. We will look to try and deal with some of the questions as we go through the course of our hour, but equally we'll look to mop up questions at the end. Okay, Patrick. Super, thank you very much. Right, so panel, discovery. Marvi, I'm going to come to you first. How do we define a discovery phase?
Well, the discovery, we can define it as a time-boxed period of activity, which can take days or weeks, depending on the project complexity and scale. And it seeks to set the foundation for the project delivery from a scope, commercial, technical, and governance perspective. Okay,
and Louisa, I'll come to you next. We're going to jump straight into it now. So why a discovery phase? What do, from an answer perspective, obviously there are worldviews, but from an answer perspective, what's the why of discovery?
So for me, a discovery, it's intended to get everybody sort of like involved in the project, in the delivery together, and it sets them expectations right from the beginning. You can kind of start to build relationships between you and the client, and you can like hopefully start to establish kind of that roadmap to delivery. And also you're starting to eliminate them risks. You're starting to understand what them constraints are, them limitations. And like I said before, them relationships, you're building trust right from day dot before you get into the do of the project, of the delivery.
You need to keep your powder dry, Louisa. I can see a theme that we're going to be discussing coming down the line there. Ed, I'm going to come to you. I think we'll probably chuck it around between you and Louisa. Ed, what's the shortest discovery phase you've ever run?
3 days for me.
Okay, 3 days. So what's the difference then between a 3-day discovery and a 2 to 4 week discovery?
It's really about, and I think you're going to go, that's a theme we're discussing later, but it's about your outcomes. Right. So yes. A 2 to 3 day discovery, you have very different outcomes or levels of outcomes to what you have over 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah. 2 to 4 weeks, you're expecting a plan, you expect an estimate, so you've got a high level of confidence in, and you're looking forward at, how do we deliver this? How do we get this out? In a 2 to 3 day discovery, you're looking at, is our value proposition valid? Do we understand the high level features of that? Can we break it down in some way to use the stories? And can we give it a rough estimate with a high degree of uncertainty around it?
Okay. So there's a question actually just coming from the audience, Ed. So if you're going to run a 2 to 3 day discovery phase, do you then need to run a longer sprint zero to get a level of confidence in your estimates?
I think it depends on what you're getting out of that 2 to 3 days. As I said, you come out of it normally with an estimate that's got a high level of risk in it. But if it's during project and you're actually running it just to revalidate where you are in that position, probably not. Right at the start where you've got that high degree, yeah, you might run a sprint zero where you're going through and just refining that down further, exploring all the epics and the user stories that have further detail, and maybe running a design sprint as well whilst you're in there.
So I think the question, I'm sorry.
No, go.
I think the question that we should make is, what do you intend to achieve with a longer sprint zero? And then after that, as long as you know then the output of the sprint zero, then you can decide if to run it longer or not. That's it.
I agree completely. And I think Ed's touched on something quite interesting there, which is, and we are obviously, Ed, you're quite right. We're going to come on to talking about outcomes, but I think you mentioned there it could be the difference between running a period of work to qualify whether a value proposition, is potentially valid for go-to-market strategy. It could be something that's run within the context of a much more mature organization with much more mature products. So actually, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but what you were touching on there is it's pretty kind of sector and company agnostic. It doesn't really matter how old you are.
No, even you can do it, Rich, at your age. No, really, if it's a brand new startup, a 2 to 3 day sprint may absolutely be brilliant for just what is our value proposition? Do we understand it? And you're putting a test right at the start before you spend any real hard cash to make sure that you're going in the right direction. You may even pivot at the end of that 2 to 3 day sprint and decide, actually, what we thought isn't quite right. We may go in a different direction now and explore that instead. Or it may be a mature organization where they're looking at adding a feature onto an existing product, and that 2 to 3 day sprint may be used just to understand, if we add this feature, what does it give, and is it the outcome that the customer wants?
I think, look, it would be remiss of us not to kind of tackle some of the ways that not just ways of working, but the new normal. The world has changed in the last 6 months. Certainly, one of my observations is discovery is becoming much more important, because people need to be able to qualify and make informed investment decisions as quickly as possible. I think, look, our heritage, our traditional model is the 2 to 4 week model, and I think it will always have its place. But I think now, certainly, we're seeing a need to respond to customers, to mobilize much more quickly, to get them to a point where they're making a decision. It's a very, I think the challenges that are placed on discovery are very different now. Louisa, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, the man behind the scenes, Patrick, you actually got me and Patrick to do a discovery in one day.
I did.
Do you remember that?
I did, yes.
Yeah, that was, but again, it was focus. I drew the goals as big as I can across the whiteboard. This was when we was back in the office, and we just made sure we're just tuning back into what that, obviously I know we're going to come on to outputs and outcomes, but we kept tuning back into that. As long as you stay focused, that's the key.
So we've touched on it a couple of times. We're going to talk about outcomes in a minute, but if I could just take a little bit of an opportunity just to wrap on this first section. So discovery phase, time box period of initiation. Really, the time that you're going to spend on discovery is really going to be driven by what it is that you're looking to achieve in that period of time. It could be about value proposition, validation. It could be about understanding enough about scope to get to a roadmap and a plan. Equally, it's also important that you're going to gel a team. So it's about that instilling of agile mindset. Okay, anything more from you guys on that, or are we good to move forwards?
Now that you're mentioning team as well, actually, and I'm also seeing that our man behind the scenes sent us a question, just come up on Slido, which are the people involved in discovery, regarding actually where are the participants.
Marvi, go.
Yeah, just read it. So the participants basically are all the experts, or everyone that actually you feel should be involved in discovery, from a technical side, so technical lead, testing as well, testing lead, UX designer as well, in case you are going to provide a user research regarding user journey, wireframes, UI, user interface. But at the same time, the project manager, because you need a little bit of governance as well around discovery, and we're going to cover it in a way in following up this event. One important person from the client side should be the product owner, which is the one with the in-depth knowledge about the product goals. And this is a person that should be, it's really remarkable to have this person including discovery, because it's the person that knows most about the business needings. So all the information that you're going to gather you're going to gather them from this person. It should be the same person to follow you as well during the project delivery, or at least it should hand over this information, this knowledge to someone that will cover you as well during the delivery.
Yeah. So I think in the absence of I think the product owner is probably a whole other webinar in itself, or the role of the product owner. I think the principle for me is that this is, and I think the question mentions there about, is it business, is it technology? It's both of those things, but it's critically, it's the customer. So we're setting out to kick the tires of a change initiative, whatever the scope of that is, but critically to us, we put the customer at the very center of that. Okay, good stuff. So moving forwards then, next key question. Why is it, we've touched on it a little bit. Ed, I'm going to chuck this to you. What's the importance of an outcome in discovery? What is the outcome?
So the outcome keeps you focused on why we're there. It gets everyone bought into the session. So if everyone understands what you're trying to achieve, everyone's driving towards that goal, and the outcome then is the focus. It's the why. It's why are we here doing this? What are we trying to achieve?
As much as people, it's a maligned phrase around answer, I do use it far too often. It's what's the exam questions we're trying to answer, I guess.
Exactly.
I get, Louisa, we've done a couple of discoveries together. So I think people sometimes get outcome and output convoluted. Talk us through outcomes versus outputs.
Yeah, so like Ed said, so obviously the outcome sets the focus for the outputs. So obviously, like we said about the outcomes, it's the mindset. Why are we in the room? What are we here to answer? But the kind of the outputs is so you're measuring your outputs. It's linked to what the discovery is, why we're here, and that could be anything from solution design, project initiation documents, so setting out what the plan is, the ways of working, the cost model as well. So a bit of commercials. The outputs are more like your hard artifacts.
I think, and I agree with all of the above. I think, again, a little bit of a reflection on the way that we're working forward. I think there's more. It's more. There is a more significant imperative now than ever that discovery is about business case. It's about understanding, is there a need that this initiative is responding to? Is it delivering a why? And actually, are we able to see that this is going to deliver value, not just to a customer, but to the organization? I guess the two are intrinsically linked. We're talking about outcomes. I think, again, a little bit of reflection for me. I think the outcomes are kind of the anchor points of discovery. Discovery is can be quite frenetic. They're very, very intense periods of activity. There are lots of moving parts, and I think it's sometimes a little bit too easy for all of us. I'm sure we've all been guilty of it, to kind of forget that, right, am I doing the right thing now to get to where I need to get to, which granted we'll come on to a little bit later, but it's that anchor point. Do we all understand what it is we're looking to achieve?
I just say I agree with that, because for me as well, you focus on like what the output is. So you kind of you've got like, oh my god, I need to get the solution, this, that, I need to get all that, but then you sort of like forget the main reason why we're all here. And them outputs obviously are so important, but they might not be relevant if you're not focusing.
The one thing, I suppose, at the same time, the one thing that we might actually be about to overlook, but we shouldn't, is, we talked earlier about putting the customer at the center of what we do in discovery phase. So we do lots in terms of user experience and experience design to make sure that we're understanding who the customers are, what are the frustrations, what are the needs, what are we trying to resolve for these customers, what are the flows that we need to make sure that any digital initiative accommodates to deliver those customer needs. So I think UX artifacts and outputs will always be a standard element of a discovery phase, certainly for us. Ed, question directly to you then. In fact, I've done why. It's not for Ed, it's for Marvi. Marvi, can the outcomes of a discovery phase change?
I was going to add, indeed, when you say that the outcome are our anchor point, is that because outcome indeed are driving output. And we know as well that outcome, obviously the business meetings are changing every time, every hour, every second, literally. So that's absolutely normal that outcome will change during a discovery. The most important things, everything can change during discovery, because you are there to validate a proposal, you are there to validate a problem from a user side. So from a client side as well, the client is coming to you, say, I have this problem, I want to develop this solution for this problem. And this is the moment in which you are validating it. So the outcome can absolutely be different than the other discovery. And also your output, you can generate different stuff as well. We are following a plan, but everything can change actually during discovery as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Just to add on top of that, for what Marvi was saying, I think one of the key agile mindsets is the pivot. It's what we're aiming for, and then realizing that maybe that isn't actually the correct thing, and we need to pivot there. You may decide to try and like use the lights in your room, find out they don't work, so get some lamps in instead.
Which, can we just point out, which is exactly what's happened to me. So the fuses have gone, and so with about 2 minutes to spare, I'm now surrounded by table lamps. So I apologise for the slightly moody lighting in here.
So pivot is a key agile mindset, and pivoting during discovery is absolutely acceptable.
Yeah, we used to say, oh, sorry.
No, go.
We used to say, fail fast to learn fast. Agile.
I agree, and I think, or rather, actually, let me pose a question. If, whilst we are talking about having an outcome and testing ourselves, are we delivering against the output and the potential that we might pivot based on what that test or what that test produces, does having an outcome preclude innovation or preclude experimentation in discovery phase? Ed, I'll throw that to you.
No, I wouldn't say so. The outcomes are there essentially as tests. We're testing this through the activities and the outputs that we're generating. Is that correct? No. You should be looking at what is the problem? How do we solve that to achieve the outcome? And the innovation sits between the middle.
Okay. So if I can just play just play this back at you then. So to set an outcome is effectively to set a vision, to set a series of exam questions that we're looking to answer as part of a discovery phase. They form almost our, like the bedrock or the anchor point that during, regardless of whether it's, 1 or 2 to 3 days and you're making decisions in hours, or it's 2 to 4 weeks and you have days worth of activity, these are the anchor points by which we will all coalesce or around which we'll coalesce to say, are we still delivering against the right exam, or are we delivering against the exam questions, and are they still the right exam questions? If those are not the outcomes that we right now need to deliver to, then we will pivot. Very different, therefore, to outputs, which are, we recognize from an Agile perspective, we don't want to produce documentation for documentation's sake, but at the same time, we'll choose the right level of documentation, whether that's in governance and project initiation, whether it's in requirements analysis, user story catalogs, prioritization, identification of MVP, all that good and great stuff, solution design, test strategies, UX, and then when I say UX, a whole plethora of UX artifacts around customer and structured design thinking. Any more on outcomes before we move forwards? Awesome. Okay. So there are 3 project managers on this call, and I know how much we love a plan, even if it's post-it notes on the wall. So I'm going to come straight to Louisa. Why or how do we balance that need to be adaptable while still running to a plan? Why is the plan important?
Well, the plan's important because it underpins what we're doing. Everybody knows the what, the why, who's involved, and obviously you've kind of got some sort of goals to drive towards. And like we said, that plan may change. It's not a problem. We might pivot again, not a problem. But as long as we've got a plan and we're keeping that up to date, we can always like measure where we're at, measure that success. Yeah. Like I said, expect the unexpected, because things can be one day going that way in your plan and it might absolutely change the next day. But as long as you're kind of getting together, kind of focuses on that plan, and you've got the sort of the plan updated for the next day, it's not a problem.
I'm jumping around a little bit here now, but we talk about agile mindset, and I think one of the things, Marvi, that I saw you do with great success earlier this year when working with a customer who wasn't necessarily of agile mindset, you pivoted your approach to bring the plan to life. So how did you bring the plan to life?
This is true, actually. It was a great experience, to be honest, because working with a challenging client, I think that is always good for a project manager, for an agile project manager when wants to bring.
It's easy to say that afterwards, Marvi.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, I want to say that. Let me have my moment. Anyway, yeah, so we started basically showing the client during the project kickoff, the discovery kickoff day as well, with an Excel spreadsheet with a plan. We projected it on a monitor, and the plan was there every day. After 2 or 3 days, we saw that actually there was not interest from the client side on the plan, because they understood that, well, obviously there were a lot of activity going on. So they were like, yeah, we have this plan. I think that we want to have a different view of the plan. So I don't know what this activity is properly getting to achieve. So we basically replaced the spreadsheet plan with a Kanban board. So we just placed it in there, all the activity and their outputs as well, with different color. The day which we used to have stand up every day as well. So properly going for an agile approach during discovery as well. When that day the client walked into the room, he saw this Kanban board with a plan. It was like completely different approach to what we were doing. So he understood that everything was happening concurrently as well, but the plan was guiding us. At the same time, we could instead process with one activity and delay another one, change the plan, adapt it to what we were doing, and adapt as well the output of each things that we were going to do, adding as well a column in which the client could review what we were doing. Really great, because he could understand as well where it was asked to come in and into review actually our work. So there was basically bringing to the room all the collaboration that you are expecting to have.
I think, and Marvi and I have obviously talked about this a lot since this particular event, but I think for me, there was a real moment in time when you just saw the transformation from supplier and customer to one team. And everybody in the room, whether you were transient in and out, and everybody knew this is what's happening. this is where we are against, you know, where we wanted to be. These are our priorities. And it really did remove that notion of silo. You know, there was a real, even around something as basic as a plan, the plan started to become very collaborative. I used a word at the outset of the session, which we do use quite a lot, which is orchestration. I suppose it's probably quite an overblown word for what I'm trying to say. Really, the simplicity is, for me, you know, discovery can be quite frenetic, and there can be, because you've got a finite period of time to deliver your outcome and your outputs. Often you will find that the team tend to come together for periods or sessions and look at particular topics, but then the team will splinter and run concurrently. And understanding, you know, are the right people doing the right thing at the right time to contribute to the outcome is a very, very difficult thing to keep a hold of. And orchestration, even with the use of something as simple as a post-it note Kanban board,
at the same
is
time,
absolutely critical.
Yeah, I think that at the same time, this view can give us more autonomy, can give more autonomy to the single person itself as well,
Yeah.
because they know what they are doing, so they know their responsibilities as well. They are committed to that, but at the same time, it creates a collaborative approach because anyone can see there's transparency in the room, basically.
Yeah.
Anyone.
So, again, and with a little bit of a nod to the circumstance we find ourselves in now, let's just explore for a couple of minutes the impact of remote working.
Yeah, well, I could answer that one because I have learned a lot in the last 6 months. Obviously, I'm a sucker for a post-it note. To be fair, I have them on my desk. I have them on my desk still. But yeah, we've gone from this post-it notes on a wall falling off, but Kanban boards, that sort of stuff, and we're going to sort of like online, and it's mirror boards or whatever we use. But a thing for me is, what I've learned is you're constantly having Zoom calls, and it's constantly like an agenda, and we're here to discuss a plan, and we're here, and it can be quite formal. And yes, the discovery phase is formal, and you have got a plan, and there's high energy. But I like to keep that high energy and that kind of building that team still. So what I have been doing is like having like check-ins with, like, well, me and you, Rich, we had a check-in the other day, walking up and down the garden. I like that. It's like kind of recreating that sort of like kitchen coffee sort of thing, and I think
Marvin's smiling now because Marvin knows that I've rung it from the garden.
Yeah, but I just think it's so important, because if not, it would just become such a sort of like military exercise.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think if anything, the notion of remote working is actually, it's made us, certainly in my experience from Answer and the projects that we're running now and have been doing for the last 6 months or so, is communication has become more important than ever. And the plan actually around, again, are we doing the right thing at the right time, the right people, that's really driving that communication. You know, there is a lot more fluidity, and I think now to what we're doing. Okay, any more on planning and orchestration? Okay, I think, yeah, look, at the risk of overly recapping, I think, you know, it's that, again, key principles of transparency and control. So we're working within the context of an outcome. The activities that we're doing, they do need to be orchestrated. Do we have control over all the moving parts in this discovery phase? And do we have the clarity and the transparency on, if we've got an issue, then how to resolve that issue? And equally, or maybe perhaps not an issue, if we've got a competing priority or a need to pivot, then do we have the levers by which we can recognize that and make a change? Okay, awesome. Right, I think the next section is my personal favorite. And I'm going to, in fact, I'm going to come to Louisa and Ed on this. I'm very much a people person. I believe that, you know, great digital change projects, actually, the absolute center of that is great people. So Louisa, I'll come to you first. Why is it important to build a team dynamic in discovery?
Well, it's important because obviously building them relationships serve the sort of like subsequent projects, and building that collaboration sort of on day one of discovery instead of day one of the project. You've already got a sort of a feel for each other. You know each other's sort of like ways of working, and that sort of like mobilization sort of session sort of already been done because you've been in that room already. And obviously you know who you're dealing with. And then when looking from a client point of view as well, you're building that trust and that sort of like control with the client, and then and hopefully it's a success from there.
I think trust is massive.
Yeah.
I think that look, one of the things, at the risk of sounding, I suppose, a little bit kind of evangelical, one of Answer's core company values is to put love in the room, and clearly my favourite because I wrote it, much maligned by all. Actually, it really the essence of putting love in the room is all around. In fact, I would defy any project manager who to claim that every project they've ever run has been a success. The wheels will come off at some point on pretty much every project. And at the point where the wheels come off, it's that trust and it's that relationship and that team dynamic that will help a team navigate more difficult waters. I think, Ed, I'm going to come to you next, because I think Louisa used the word trust. For me, I think the presence of trust enables empowerment. And you and I obviously talked about empowerment. Give me your thoughts.
We absolutely have. Empowerment is probably one of the critical parts of Agile and discovery. Making sure that the people that you've got there are there and able to make decisions, that they know what the company direction is, what the strategy is, what the tactics are, what the outcome is that the company's looking for from this, and being able to make those decisions on the day in place without having to go and check with their manager or check with someone else. That person absolutely has to be empowered to be the one to do the right thing and make those decisions.
I think that's the key, isn't it? I think for me, empowerment and autonomy are two concepts that we come back to again and again. And only if you've got, a level of empowerment, autonomy, do you start to see that the team is making good, informed decisions, and making decisions equally that they themselves are prepared to be held accountable for. And there is, we can't underestimate the trust that has to be in place for that to happen, because again, if the wheels start to come off, then finger pointing is a very, very, it's a quick route to get there. Marvi, any thoughts from you on team?
I think that it's really important to note as well that when we talk about team, we consider as well, obviously, as the product owner in the team, so like properly part of the team. So the client is assuming to be a part of it, not like seen as an external role outside of the Agile team, doing his stuff and then coming back to the team just to review what we are doing. It should be an integral part of the team when we are doing the project delivery as well. And this is something really important that came in all the experience that we had so far as well. When you have the product owner always there sitting with the team, collaborating as if you are just one full company is completely, is enabling you to achieve great success in the project.
I completely agree. I think I'm myself going to pivot a little bit here now. We talked earlier about communication and Louisa, your love of a kitchen chat and a coffee. How have you found managing that spirit of collaboration and kind of inter-team cooperation and trust building? How have you managed that when we're scattered into the four winds?
Yeah, well, the project that I'm on now, actually, we've started to, so obviously everyone loves a stand-up in the morning, but I sort of, for the first week when we went remote working, I felt like I was like a lone wolf. I was like, where is everybody? I'm used to sort of being around everybody. So I made sure we always have a stand down as well.
Right,
and
okay.
that stand down doesn't need to be as sort of like formal going around the room or walking the board. It's just even if it's just a check-in, how is everybody doing? Like any issues, any blockers, that sort of thing. I just think that was one thing that kind of kept that team spirit alive as well. And then also we've got this thing called Discord as well. So it's like, so instead of just like setting up a meeting all the time, Discord's there and we can just jump on and we can just chat straight away about anything and everything without setting up that meeting. But yeah, I had mine on always for like the first 2 weeks, and then I just had the devs just sending weird noises and all sorts. I do turn it off now and then.
This is probably a good point. This is probably a good opportunity for me to admit that I didn't understand Discord when we first brought it in. I still don't understand it, and I've never used it.
I deleted it.
I went to go make a drink and came back, and I just heard this like I thought I was a cat in my room, and there was one of the guys had put a cat noise. I was like, what? But it's that type of stuff of trying to keep people together.
I think so. And I think equally sessions like the retrospective have never been more important. And look, I don't want to lose sight of the fact we're here to talk about discovery, but I think we do absolutely, you know, whilst we're doing these remote time box period of activity, I think that check-in and that, you know, are we doing not just, yeah, are we doing the right thing, but are we doing it the right way? I think is pretty critical. Ed, any thoughts?
I was just going to say, obviously, you know, Rich, during the past 6 months, we're actually taking on a new customer with a brand new proposition. We obviously can't get everyone in the room. We can't do all those good things that Louisa's talked about around building up that trust and building up the camaraderie that you normally get in a room. So we've had to find new ways of doing that, and that is using things like Miro and Zoom. We actually ran and piloted our 3-day discovery as well, totally remotely, which was probably quite a crazy thing to do, but really successful as well.
Agreed.
And by carrying on working as we did, but just finding new tools to do that, I think that's helped build that same level of teamwork and trust.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think if I can, I suppose, recap, building that team dynamic, really what we aspire to is to build an agile and a team mindset around some really core components. Collective ownership, you know, the team collectively owns the outcome or the delivery of the outcome that we're looking to achieve. Collaboration, communication, transparency, iteration, and understanding, you know, what are the levers that we need access to make sure that we as a team are moving together. Trust, you know, collective decision making. I think these are all things that really do set the building blocks. Marvi, when you first talked about discovery at the top of this session, you mentioned that this is about setting the foundations. I think, you know, completely aside from, you know, outputs and outcomes, actually having formed a team that collectively delivers and has, you know, a shared mindset is absolutely critical for moving forwards into a project.
Yeah.
Go.
This is
No,
indeed,
go.
you
Third time
say,
you've interrupted
you
me,
mentioned
Marvin.
it.
Third time.
That's right, you're right.
Sorry, I'm gonna,
Once more, Marvin.
I want to lead a session.
Sorry, go on. You have the floor.
I was saying you indeed was mentioning the agile mindset that you're saying everything about obviously transparency, trust, and everything, because agile starts from day one of discovery, not day one of delivery. So what we are saying here is that you bring the agile mindset during discovery as well. It's not that agile discovery is completely separated from delivery. You should always go approach with this mindset, because the mindset is something belonging to you, the agile one. It's not something that you'd say, okay, I'm gonna go one day this mindset, another day waterfall one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying with that.
You've just the word. Obviously, we talked about mindset. Actually, quite interestingly, there's a question just come in from the audience. How do you continue the discovery mindset throughout a delivery project? Louisa, given you've probably been on the longest standing project of this group of people, how have you retained that discovery mindset, that exploratory mindset as you've gone?
Yeah, so just ways of working, definitely, like making sure ways of working, team charter, that sort of stuff, is all that good stuff is there. And when new people come in from, so for example, we had a new person from the client join the project team. We had a mini mob session, mini mobilization session, just to kind of bring that together. But then also sort of that mindset of pivot and change, which always happens and will always happen, but making sure we're not disappointed as if things do pivot, and it's kind of keeping that sort of like collaboration up through sprint to sprint to sprint.
I think I absolutely agree with all above. I think I'll probably, and in fact, actually, Marvi, I'll throw this to you. I think one of the things that I've seen work beautifully on one of your projects recently was that iterative discovery process. And that almost discovery became a constant throughout the life of the project. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Well, yeah, because basically discovery never ends during the delivery, actually. We say that during discovery, we are going to unreveal the uncertainty, but these uncertainties are not completely unrevealed, because you know that you are going to start the project with certain risks that you discover during discovery.
Yeah.
So even if you set up an MVP during discovery, a backlog of requirements, and wireframes as well as sketch on the wireframes, everything can continuously change into the delivery, because the business needs are changing, outcomes changing, outputs are going to change as well. And the most important thing is indeed that you never stop to question yourself. So you are in constant collaboration with the customer during the project delivery. And from day one, you can continue the discovery process, literally saying, okay, this is the backlog to be producing during discovery. Are we happy with this? Let's go to prioritize it. Let's add more details, more acceptance criteria. It happens that you should estimate sometimes the user story produced on discovery. This is fine as long as there is enough negotiation with the customer in prioritizing the backlog and the scope as well. So the scope can always change.
Two things that you mentioned there that I think are really, again, key, and actually we haven't touched on already, is, part of discovery is understanding risk. And he's understanding uncertainty. We are going to come on to uncertainty in our final section, but I think you're right. I think understanding what presents a potential risk to continue delivery, and we will iterate discovery as we go. Ed, anything to wrap up on that?
Yeah, I think as well, like in answer, we use refinements a lot before we enter a scrum, and that's a great time just to run a mini discovery session. Look back over, look at what those initial tests were that were defined in discovery to prove that the proposition is working. Make sure you're still achieving those, and then you can pivot from there as well if needed.
Agreed. Okay, brilliant. So final section that we're going to move into is understanding the notion of just enough, and how do you stop yourself from disappearing down a rabbit hole. Now, Marvi, I'm going to come to you because the project that you did a recent discovery phase on was very unquestionably complex, and did have the potential that a 4-week discovery could easily have become a 9-month discovery. So how did you stop that?
This is true. Actually, as I said just 2 seconds ago, is that discovery is to reveal the uncertainty and the risk that you might encounter during the project delivery. So it's not actually to reveal everything and adding all the detail to your requirements, or producing all the completed wireframes, because it is part of the delivery. And as I say, discovery is continuing during the delivery. The most important thing I think is that to coach the client in understanding this, because there are still misconceptions. A lot of people think that discovery is about understanding everything, so don't leave any room for uncertainty for the delivery. Making a plan, that is the plan. This is a completely waterfall approach, obviously, otherwise it was going to be a kind of different discovery phase, not the agile discovery phase. And so the approach that you're studying with the client, I think, is the most important thing to start with it, because obviously otherwise clients coming to you say, okay, I'm spending a lot of money for the discovery, and just coming out with a roadmap, and then you are going to say me during the delivery that the roadmap is no more valuable, is no more valid. What are you going to say? This is the most important. This is where the agile mindset is coming, because you need to be able to adapt to change. You need to coach the client that change can happen. Change is the only constant during these phases, and you can always work out again the scope, adding more details during the delivery. So no need to stop everything at discovery. Otherwise, we were going to implement the software at discovery time.
I completely agree. I think I've used, I think probably with you all actually, I've used a turn of phrase that when we're in discovery, we've got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. We have to accept that what we understand now, we understand within the context of the view of the world at that point in time, and that is inevitably going to change. Louisa, in fact, I've just seen a question come through actually that really does tie into this. So if we do a period of discovery, and to Marvi's point there, we know just enough to be able to make an informed view on to deliver this given change initiative. It's going to take this long, and we think it's going to cost this much. Key questions that inevitably are always going to get asked. Do you think that sets unreasonable expectations or baseline expectations on teams? How would you manage that, Louisa?
Well, I think as long as you've got an MVP. So for me, that just enough is sort of focused around an MVP. Obviously, if people are aware of it, minimal viable product. It's not just the minimum; it's the viable. It still needs to work, but it's the heart of what we need. And as long as you're still focusing in on that, testing the ask, that hypothesis that has been set in your discovery, around the proposition, I don't think you're going to go too well from the plan. And obviously, as long as your product owner and your sponsors are kind of involved in that sort of prioritization of the MVP. For example, when you're doing your user catalog, your outputs, I like to have big visuals of your epic, so it's really colourful and you can sort of see these are sort of the things we're going to focus on, and these are the sort of like nice to haves. As long as you've got that sort of like clear understanding, then you're setting yourself in for a good start.
So let me just play this back at you. So in Discovery, we'll define an MVP, where an MVP is the minimum amount of work that we want to be able to do before we can realistically test something. I think playing this back at you, what you're saying is we come out of Discovery having a uniform view of that, or a collective view of that. What's important in terms of that expectation setting is, if for whatever reason we disprove the hypothesis, everybody understands why we've disproved it, and everybody understands why there is a change in understanding from when we closed the discovery phase. That a fair reflection? Okay.
I think just as well, Rich, something about the setting the expectations and all of that. It's just your outcomes as well. How are you setting your outcomes? If your outcomes are too specific and too restrictive, then you are going to be setting the incorrect expectations with everyone in the team. So it's making sure your outcomes are at the right level as well is quite key.
I think from here on in, Ed, it's now Ed the outcome Brumhead. Does anybody else have a view on how to stop yourself from going down the rabbit hole? Okay.
Think about the plan.
That's for Marvy. You're out.
Oh my God. Think about what I was saying. Think about the plan as a guideline for your activity rather than the goal itself, to achieve your goal, not the goal itself. So most of people think the plan is the goal. This is not.
Brilliant.
And coming back to you saying about your beautiful phrase about what is the exam question, making sure you then go down the rabbit hole is always coming back to that and saying, have we answered that sufficiently? And as long as you've answered that exam question sufficiently, you can move on and do the next thing. I
think sufficiently is key. We don't need to know everything right now. We need to know just enough. And that isn't an easy place to exist. I think we would all agree from when we first started our foray into Agile, however long, probably a little bit longer for me than the rest of you, unfortunately. Everybody goes through that anxiety around, oh, do we know enough? Do we need to keep going? Another question, in fact, listen, panel, that's been superb. Thank you very much. Now we are really under pressure because we're going to jump into a Q&A. Patrick, if you could fire that back up. So I have just seen a question down there at the bottom. Whoop, sorry, Patrick, if you could go back to the Q&A. Let me just move my window. So to the panel then, this is a great question. How easy is it to convince customers that decisions can be left until later? And how do we decide now is the latest date for a decision to be made? Fantastic question. Ed, I'm going to come to you. You're grinning. You've got an answer.
Not a lot at all. I'm thinking, Christ, I feel sorry for whoever has to answer that. That's what
I think so. Let me kick off then. I think again, it becomes. I think you have to pitch the right level of detail, and the right level of detail that informs decision making is going to be different on every single project. And I think if you set out at the start of any engagement that says, you know, we're going to make decisions based on this level of detail now, we accept that decisions are going to have to be reviewed iteratively throughout the course of the project, and importantly, that you honour that. I think, you know, people worry, and we've just talked quite a lot about MVP. I remember a conversation with a customer, and it does align to this really, a conversation with a customer, a program director of a go-to-market startup bank, and we were discussing the concept of MVP, and she immediately cut across me and said, yeah, but MVP is just a never list. It's just the stuff, you know, we'll do just enough, and then the rest of it will just get forgotten forever. And I think I understood where she was coming from. I think what we needed to then demonstrate to her was that, look, the decisions that we're making now, we're making credible decisions now. But what we then really stressed on was, these are the points at which we're going to revisit all of these decisions. And this is the mechanism by which we're going to revisit these decisions, and the mechanism by which we're going to record and make sure everybody's bought into them. I don't know if anybody's got anything else they want to add on to that.
Yeah, so I think a way as well is just making that decision making natural and part of the process, especially in discovery. By using tools and techniques, people can make decisions almost without realizing it, and then they can understand as well why they're making those decisions. So really, all discovery phases should be a journey or a story where you're starting with a problem and then you're going through and understanding that what needs to happen first, what are we testing, what's the hypothesis, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve. And it becomes a really natural process, and part of the journey of the team is just making those decisions and accepting they're the right decisions at that time.
Agreed. Super. Thanks, Ed. Sidesh, this is another killer question. This is really good. So, panel, for fixed budget projects, and Marvi, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to come to you on this. For fixed budget projects, how do you factor in budget required for discovery phase, which involves various resources? So if you've got a finite amount of money, how do you factor commercially a discovery phase?
I think this is the case in which we need to consider the project scale and complexity and decide how long should be our discovery phase, and as well what we are going to achieve with the discovery phase. Is needed a technical leader? Is obviously it's always most of the time. Is needed a test strategy at this time, or we can reserve the test lead at this time, or can we reserve the strategy later? Regarding UX designer as well. So this is I think that most of the answer to this question will be related to the project complexity that we are going to cover. So you got a fixed budget, then you say, okay, this is a bigger project. I would say, in any case, we should run a 1 week discovery or something like that, just to resolve the uncertainty. So you have this fixed budget. Is the budget valid to implement what you aim to implement, or actually should we reconsider what you are going to want to achieve after the project delivery? I think this.
Oh, I think we've just lost Marvi.
Yeah, I'll add into that one, Rich. You know, I said about me and Patrick behind the scenes, we did that 1 day sort of discovery. So obviously it was just sort of like, hi, Marvi's back. Obviously it was just myself and Patrick, sort of, technical lead. And the reason for that discovery is sort of, they had an idea, but they didn't know which way they wanted to go with this idea. And I think just having us two in a room, obviously with the business sponsor, and it was a day, so obviously cost is down for that. It was just so effective because the project sponsor kind of came away from it and was thinking, actually, my head was going that way, but now it's going that way. And I think that sort of, like Marvi said, reducing the people who's in the room is a good way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that it will. I don't know if this was heard. Sorry, am I back? Yeah.
You're back.
Thank you. I think that this would allow more to question your problem. So if you're probably providing a good solution to what you're thinking you're going to do or not. Having a fixed budget sometimes can be beneficial for a discovery phase or for starting a project, probably because you know that this is your budget. You cannot actually extend it or change it or whatever. So let's sit for at least 1 day of discovery and then understanding if what we are going to achieve is our goal or not.
I think if I can close out on this, one thing for me that you tend to find that fixed budget engagements are associated, and this is largely my experience, I must admit, that this is largely associated with projects where there is a very reduced or it's a very risk averse environment, or rather flip it, that people are concerned about risk of delivery, therefore they want to be absolute about cost. I suppose the way I would look at it is, if there are areas of concern and therefore we're driving to a fixed budget, then what are those areas of concern? How do we look to mitigate those areas of concern by an accelerated period of insight? And only then, once you've got that right, well, what is it we need to do to make sure we're de-risking delivery within the context of a fixed budget? Once we know what we're going to do, then you can determine how much of that budget you would allocate to discovery activity. I'm conscious we're very close to running to time. I think we've covered the how do you get buy-in for discovery when all that's been delivered is cost and plan, talking about, you know, I suppose actually just to very quickly touch on that, it's not just a plan and a cost. It's insight, it's intellectual property more often than not. It's understanding that you've got a robust view of scope, of solution design, of how you're going to test, of what, you know, your actual path to live looks like, what your customer, who your customer is, how are you going to engage with those people in order to show that you're delivering the right thing. Really, it does become much more around the narrative of what you're trying to achieve. The question I do just want to quickly touch on before we close is, in your example, considering website design, who is the customer? Is it the customer transacting with the website, or the client who wants the website, or both? Ed, the outcome, Brumhead. Oh, she's done it again. That's 5.
No, because I think it was the example I made on the cast.
Okay, so
Big fun, guys.
Ed, I still threw it at you. I'm going to come to you first, and then we'll go to Marvin.
So for me, it's ultimately the end customer who is using this. So if it's an external only facing website, it's who's using that website. If it's internal and external, it's internal and external people. Ultimately, you've got your customer, as in we've got our customer who wants us to build the website in the room of us already, and you never not have that. What is missing is that end customer, who's standing up for them, who's bringing in what their desires are, what their outcomes are, and who's their voice in the room. And that's really what the person you've got to pull in.
I agree. I think, look, I might be paraphrasing very, very poorly from a statement that I heard probably several years ago now, that truly successful digital strategy is the combination of a clear organizational strategy with a validated customer need. And say, if we just break that down for 1 second, that's understanding, you know, for us, our customer has a strategy for their business, but their strategy is intrinsically linked on delivering successful products and services for their customers, so that the two can never be abstract. You know, if you deliver for one, you're not going to, and you don't deliver for the other, you'll never get a truly successful digital strategy. Finally, Marvin, go on.
No, I agree with what they said.
Okay.
He answered the question.
Well, listen, we're running very, very close to time. So panel, thank you ever so much. I do really appreciate it. You taking the time to speak to us. It's been fantastic. Thank you. Patrick, our man behind the scenes, if you could move on to the next slide. Okay, so really key things that I want to make sure that we give you to take away. The first one, to focus on an outcome is simply to focus on what's valuable. We've talked a lot about exam questions and that anchor point. That is an intrinsic aspect of any good agile process. The second one, none of us on the panel seek bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake. Governance doesn't have to be an onerous process or onerous processes. It doesn't have to be, you know, Bibles of documentation produced, but having a plan and understanding where you are on that plan is absolutely key to discovery. The third one is probably the one that I'm most passionate about. That discovery is where the point where you really do start to establish your agile culture, your mindset for delivery. And I think we've explored a little bit here this afternoon that it doesn't matter what sector you're in, doesn't matter what organization you're in, or the maturity of that organization. That adoption of that mindset, the collaboration, the collaboration and the establishing of trust is absolutely key. And lastly, just enough is good enough, but not for long. We've all experienced discovery phases running into delivery projects, and we recognise that, yeah, the discovery phase is fantastic, but the minute you're into delivery, it becomes much more about granularity at the right time to make sure that you're accelerating your team accordingly. Okay, Patrick, final slide. So I've thanked the panel. It really does. The last thing for me is to thank everybody that's joined us this afternoon. We genuinely do appreciate it. We are incredibly passionate. I hope this has come across. We're incredibly passionate about not only the work that we do, but the people in Answer and in the businesses with whom we work, about building as successful agile teams as possible. If you'd like to hear more from us, we'd love to hear from you. So if you want to contact either answerdigital.com or myself at richard.ellis@answerdigital.com, please do feel free. you've given us an hour of your time, an hour of very valuable time, and consequently we're more than happy to give you some of our time back. If you would like to have a conversation about anything that you've heard today, or indeed anything else Agile, then please don't hesitate to contact us. And on that, thank you again, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.